I started playing Magic the Gathering in Invasion. I was 10 years old, wide-eyed at what the game had to offer. Back then, the entirety of cards I knew about came from the packs my brother and I opened, plus whatever we caught flipping through the pages of Scry magazine. That was the world of Magic. One day in the spring of 2001, I went into my local game store, Bigfoot's Comics and Cards, may it rest in peace, and they told me about Booster Draft. I had never heard of it, but that Friday rolled around and I gave it a try. My first ever draft. Now, my deck was not good. 5 colors, and I think I played most of the cards I drafted in some kind of 69 card abomination. If I drew Manasilics or Quirion Elves, maybe I'd have a shot at casting my spells. A couple hours later, I found myself in the O2 bracket. My opponent was also playing 5 colors, though a more reasonable 40 cards. He beat me game 1, but game 2, by some miracle of fate, I drew exactly the right lands. My plotting offense is building and slowly chipping away. I see his life total going lower. We're stalled on the ground, but he can't block my Angel of Mercy. 11, 8, 5, 2, I've got it on the next attack. He draws, smiles, says good game. Have I won? And casts Coalition Victory. He had assembled the improbable in draft. He is beaming at his now 1-2 record. This is all I wanted to do this draft. Though he may have walked away with no prizes, if you asked him, he might as well have won the event. And that was the first time I ever saw an alternate win condition card. Good morning, Magic. I'm Gavin Verhey from Wizards of the Coast. And nearly 30 years into this game's existence, alternate win condition cards still carry a bit of unique shine and excitement. When a new alternate win condition is previewed, it always piques a lot of interest. Most recently, Halo Fountain from Streets of New Capenna has people into the brewing chamber, trying to figure out the easiest way to get 15 tapped creatures. Today, I want to talk with you a bit about these kinds of cards, how we design them, and what you can expect going forward. Let's get into it. The first ever tournament legal alternate win condition card showed up in, of all sets, Prophecy in 2000, Celestial Convergence, a throwback to the card Divine Intervention from Legends, which could cause the game to be a draw. All you have to do to win the game is have the highest life total in 7 turns. How hard could it be? Though honorable mentions to the Cheese Stands Alone, which was an uncard that could give you the win, and Amulet of Quaz, which was an anti-card that could cause you to literally flip a coin to see if you or an opponent lost the game. Since then, we've printed 28 more alternate win conditions, not counting alternate player lose conditions like Mirrored and Besieged, which do play quite differently for multiplayer. They come in all varieties, ranging from controlling 4 demons to complete Liliana's contract, to winning 10 coin flips with chance encounter, to yes, even the much discussed Thassa's Oracle. We don't make many of them, but when we do, they're often quite memorable. I'd say there are 3 main design goals to follow when creating these kinds of cards. The first is they should inspire deck building. If you just toss an alternate win condition into a deck, it shouldn't be able to get you there in the vast majority of games. You need to build around it to make it work. A card like Coalition Victory or Barren Glory, for example, just isn't going to happen by accident. It gives you something to set up for and build a whole new deck that you would never have even considered. I mean, just how are you going to get those to work anyway? Even cards like Mortal Kombat and Near Death Experience, which can totally function in a regular game of Magic, are pretty unlikely to do so in the majority of decks. You really need to build around them. It's fantastic when a single card can lead to a whole new and quite different deck someone wants to build. The second is they should not be easy to do. Magic is a game with a clear main path to victory. Deal lethal damage to your opponents. Occasionally, a route like milling comes up, and that's cool. But if suddenly these cards are easy enough to accomplish that they become the default strong thing to do, it can really warp how the entire game is played and obviate the normal kind of back and forth gameplay Magic has. If the game just devolves into who casts a 5-mana enchantment and immediately wins, it's going to be a lot less interesting and fun. In fact, part of the reason why so many of them are permanents with upkeep triggers is precisely to create this fail-safe. You have a window to remove them, helping make sure you don't have a combo that instantly wins out of nowhere, and in competitive play, lets people sideboard in things like enchantment removal if these strategies are ever too prevalent. An example of an alternate win condition card that I would call a mistake because it doesn't follow these heuristics is Thassa's Oracle. It's a 2-mana card which can easily win you the game with any way to exile your library, such as Demonic Consultation, and there's no great response outside of counter magic. Even if you kill the Oracle in response to the trigger, they'll still win the game if they have an empty library. This card has gone on to deeply impact a lot of formats. Especially in a world with so much commander play, we have to be very careful with these cards. While it is important commander games end, the game ending out of nowhere in a format defined by its long battlecruiser games is often antithetical to what players of the format want. Craterhoof Behemoth at least has the courtesy to ask you to build up creatures and attack, you know? And finally, these cards should create stories. If you're building a deck around them and they aren't meant to happen often, well, then they should generate great stories when they do. I mean, here I am over 20 years later, telling a story about losing to Collation Victory. It was so memorable. In fact, it mattered so much to my opponent that he built his deck and sabotaged his entire draft just so he could do it. Pretty much any time an alternate win condition goes off, if it was tough to make happen and not just a laboratory maniac or something, I'll remember it. A good alternate win condition design gets people talking, which is probably why whenever we preview one, it draws so much attention. Let's take a look at one of my favorite alternate win condition cards, and just cards in general, Battle of Wits. Yes, it's not playable in Commander, but otherwise, this promises so much power. 5 mana to win the game next turn? Wow! It gives you that deck building challenge right away. Can you build a 200-something card deck? You've never had to do that before. The deck building incentive is neat because it gets a bunch of cards that normally wouldn't see play into a deck, helping make sure every game played against it feels a little bit different. Yes, you're going to play a lot of tutors, but there's only so many options. Because it's an upkeep trigger, there's counterplay against it too. Even in the games where you do naturally draw it and try to cast it on turn 5, people have a turn to interact with you. And the stories are so memorable. People still talk about the time Magic Hall of Famer Huey Jensen brought Battle of Wits to Grand Prix Milwaukee 2002 and made top 8. When you sit down and your opponent presents their deck and you suddenly see it's 4 times the size of yours, well, that's a moment you don't soon forget. But what's your favorite alternate win condition card? Do you wish we did more or less of them? Let me know in the comments down below. I'll be back on Monday when I provide some hints about Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. You won't want to miss it. I'll talk with you again then. And in the meantime, may you win in unconventional ways. You got this.
Inspired by the theme of these crime families in this world who are wheeling and dealing and making back alley deals. It just felt like the right place to make some politically themed cards. So I decided that I wanted to kind of push a little bit harder than usual into making some political options. And one of the ways that we did that was by making the secondary commander in each of these decks